Today, when we say we're comfortable with men talking about their mental health and being vulnerable, what we mean is we are comfortable with men we already admire in the traditional sense of masculinity and success, talking about their feelings. Celebrities, rich people, famous people, people who are already impressive to us. We do not mean we have become comfortable with ordinary, unsuccessful, struggling men being vulnerable and talking about their mental health. Right? We are comfortable with Pedro Pascal or Chris Bumstead or another famous celebrity talking about it, and we say that's a good quality. That adds on to your masculinity. When this man is unsuccessful in the traditional way, when he may be unsuccessful in his job, he might still live with his parents, he might not be attractive to women. Then we become uncomfortable about him expressing his pain over this sense of failure that he has to himself. Then we say this man, who we always, or society has often termed as a loser, if they are a man, then it's his problem. Then he needs to sort it out for himself. Then we're not his therapists. Then he's an incel. Then whatever it is, it becomes his fault. It's no longer admirable because we didn't admire the man in the first place. And this is the crux of the masculinity crisis and the dehumanization of unsuccessful men that goes on, and the reason why there's so many challenges around masculinity. Some of them are in politics, some of them are in the social world, some of them are around suicide. It's that we virtue signal a lot about who we truly are willing to allow to be vulnerable and who we see that vulnerability as a positive in. Right? In my own life, I've experienced this on the small scale. When I finished my PhD, I had a bit of a mental health crisis. I didn't have a job, I didn't have any money, I didn't have a girlfriend. I wasn't in any way a very successful guy, I suppose, in the traditional way. When I talked about my mental health then and was vulnerable then, and I needed my humanization the most, people pulled away from me, men and women. They didn't want anything to do with that. And my mental health, my vulnerability, was seen as a liability to them because I hadn't proved myself and I wasn't admired, really. I'm not saying I'm hugely admired now, but I have a reasonable job, I have money, I've been okay, I suppose, in the romantic dating world. So I'm kind of an established man, if you like, to some degree. Now that I don't need that help, I do have some depression at the moment. Now that I don't need it as much, I can get it because I've already succeeded to some degree as a man. But the reason people crack politically, socially, mentally is that they are dehumanized and not allowed to be vulnerable when they need that vulnerability for men, right? They need to be humanized when they're struggling. They need to be treated as equal, treated with compassion, the same compassion in which we humanize anyone else, right? And a lot of the narrative, even from progressives, tries to find reasons why vulnerable men's pain and the reasons for that are their fault because they don't already admire that person, right? They don't already look up to them. They don't see them as something special. They haven't proved themselves. So their problems must be their fault. And this leans into the issues with masculinity, uh, and why often, like, more toxic, if you like, masculine influences can be successful because they at least have some solution from these men. They say, okay, you've got to succeed, but at least we care about you. At least we see that this is a problem, that it's, not your fault in quite the same way. While many progressive people as well find excuses to dehumanize men who are not traditionally successful in the masculine sphere. So if you want to save a man's life, you actually want to do anything about the masculinity crisis, and you truly believe in supporting vulnerable men, then the best thing you can do is think about someone you know who's struggling and you don't admire in the traditional masculine sense, is quote unquote a loser, perhaps, even in the eyes of this traditional masculinity, and humanize them, empathize with them, understand they are the same human being and deserve it even more because they need it even more. So I do believe that many people, only successful men are actually allowed to be vulnerable, and it's seen as a good thing. And this harms so many people, men, society, and everything else.